Okay, so now we have relationship, and we do this on Wednesdays, of course. And today we're talking about handling generational differences. And having this amazing conversation with us today is Nene Ben Ekechukwu. Welcome to Wake Up Nigeria.
Thank you so much. And you look very pretty yourself.
Thank you. You have a really broad, nice, attractive smile.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so now tell me about yourself. Before you got into what you do, which is, helping families, right? Communicate, teenagers, parenting, relationships, basically. So now tell me about that qualification.
So over time, one thing that I have discovered is we can be very emotional and butt heads, especially when you feel like I don't understand you and you don't understand me.
True.
And growing up, I'm very grateful for the family I grew up in.
Yeah.
There was some level of independence and outspoken or open-mindedness, kind of. So when I hear people say, how can you talk to your mom or your dad like that? It's a little bit strange. So I started, it made me curious, kind of. It made me curious to really know what is it about the family and why are we usually this way?
Why are we usually this
Yes.
way? Okay, now talking about generational differences, right? So we're talking not just about parents and children, but also talking about spouses. For instance, the age gap between husband and wife are different. So how would you say we approach situations like that when the age gap? Because we're in Nigeria.
Yeah.
We like respect. Do you understand? So yes, how best to approach a situation like that?
Yes. So when it comes to generation, right, we have what we call, first and foremost, let me start with the very recent ones that we see around, which happen to be like our grandparents now.
Yes.
And those are what you call the baby boomers.
Yes.
So from the ages of, they were born from the ages of, from 1945, okay? 1945 to 1964. Of course, if you do the maths, they're the ones we call grandma and grandpa now, right?
Yes, yes.
And after that, we have the Generation X. So those ones were born from 1965 to 1979.
All right.
And if you notice, there is a gap.
Yes.
So for this current generation of X, they have experienced, of course, they have experienced in Nigeria here, the Civil War, the birth of NYSC, for instance.
Yes.
They are a little bit, they also take education very seriously.
True.
So when you see the little of Generation X now, they are like managers, they are very educated for those that had the privilege of going to school. They are kind of prim and proper.
Very
so if they're going out, you hardly find them wearing like flip-flops, right?
Yes.
So you now move over to what you call Generation Y or the millennials.
Yes.
So these ones are kind of open-minded, and they are the ones that a lot of Gen Xers feel like they are disrespectful. But they haven't met the Gen Zs.
They definitely
They haven't met the Gen Zs, who are more liberal.
Yes.
I mean, they grew up literally coming out with, a phone. They have all of these apps.
Yes.
You see a lot of them on social media, basically living their lives on social media. I sometimes I talk to my daughter and she's telling me TYTL. And I'm like, I'm here. Like, I'm just in the kitchen. Why are you saying that? Yeah. So you notice that if you're not conscious of your own internal understanding of generations, you would butt heads.
Very true.
As a parent, some parents that are millennials had, some people that are millennials, to beg your pardon, had parents who are Gen Xers. So you find out that they grew up in homes where you have to arrange.
Yes.
You have to make sure.
Upbringing.
Very strict upbringing, yes. You can't, hey, mom, hey, dad.
No.
If you're from some cultures, you have to kneel down to greet. So when your child comes in and just, mom, you say, what's going on? So you have to be conscious of all of these things as parents and, of course, as adults as well.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, the first thing is to understand
Understanding.
there is a difference, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not expecting everyone to adapt to your way of life. Now, of course, I would like to say it was definitely difficult for our parents to get that with different generations. Even till now, they still struggle.
Yeah.
And of course, we can even see a lot of that happening even with, election season just passed and all of that. So now, how do we relate, right? Because the Gen Zs are just doing their thing, right? Most times they're carefree. I know a lot of people say they're very they're very forward and they're fearless. I think that's the word they use. So how do we relate successfully, especially in the home family setting where we have the young ones who are going into teenagehood? And you know how teenagehood can actually be tough for parents and even for teenagers. So how do we balance that out?
Very good question. You know, if you don't appreciate something, you would likely not understand where that thing came from.
True.
So if we do not look back at our history, we won't really appreciate why we are here now.
True.
So for teenagers, for adults, for grandparents, there has to be some form of generational intelligence.
Okay.
So as a parent, maybe I may not be very vast with social media. So what do I do rather than keep having this wall of defense and saying you are always on this? How about I try to understand it?
True.
So I mean, if for those that are familiar with some of these games, you never know what are in these games. Sometimes they seem harmless. And if you do not bring yourself to the place where you understand it, you would likely just keep, you know, getting frustrated. Open an account if you're a parent, try and play those games, make out time. So that's one thing that also characterizes the millennials. Millennials see work-life balance and family time differently. So most Generation X have this mindset that when we eat dinner together, that's family time.
That is true.
But for millennials and Generation Y, it's more of let's plan to go to the cinema. Let us just go, hang out. So use those opportunities to understand how they think. Personally, I struggled with acronyms. I mean, type well, for goodness sake.
You said type well.
But I had to understand that this is where they are coming from. Everything is fast-paced. So if you are used to prim and proper, very good. I mean, looking at your beautiful set, if we were to be like some years back, I would see newspapers here. True. But you read the news and I can't even, well, we read the news, right? True. You read the news. True. So we have to understand that things are now being done differently. That way, there will be less conflict, whether in family, whether in the workspace. Understand each generation and be empathetic towards how they relate with you.
Okay, amazing. So in the end, understanding.
Understanding, yes.
So now let me just digress a little. Okay. Not really a digression, but now let's talk about relationship between spouses now. Of different generation groups. For instance, let's say we have like a 10-year gap, right? So I understand understanding is also helpful, but then again, you know, some people can be stuck in their ways. They want things is set in a particular way. And because this is not a parent-child relationship, the dynamics are kind of different. So in that kind of situation, how do we manage that properly? So that we avoid problems.
That's a very good question. So one thing that makes us human is our differences.
True.
Of course, siblings fight. Couples will always have their differences. I mean, work relationship will always have its difference as well. But one thing that, you know, unconsciously we do is to first develop resistance to something we don't understand.
True.
So a couple, for instance, like you said, that have a 10-year difference, at the back of your head, you just want respect.
You just want respect.
Yes. And unconsciously, you feel like one person has to be like a father-daughter relationship. But if you go in with that, like I said, it still boils down to understanding. If you take time to study, read, go beyond your biases, go beyond your stereotypes, go beyond that's how I was born, or that's how my parents did it. True. No, things are changing, and you don't want to be stuck in the past. Yeah, I like what some people some countries are trying to implement in the workplace, and of course to also practice what you call reverse mentoring. I think it's something that we should imbibe. Even if I'm older than you, I should be willing, open enough. Open-mindedness is something that we should implore. Be open to learn. Ask questions, very important, which is something that this generation Z are going to struggle with, because they would rather you know, internalize it and maybe just learn from TikTok or all of these social media apps. So we need to all, you know, find a common ground, which is where we communicate.
All right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
Definitely
you.
speaking with you. It's definitely amazing. Hopefully you're here next week again.
Absolutely.
And we're definitely looking forward to that one.